Arizona's Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who has loudly disagreed with Trump, and he joins us now. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So the last time we spoke, you said you did not know what you were going to do on Election Day. You must have a pretty good idea by now, though. If the election were held today, for whom would you vote?
I would not vote for Hillary Clinton, and as of now, I would still not vote for Donald Trump.
So if you don't want to vote for either of them, would you vote for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian?
You can always write somebody in. So I just know that I would like to vote for Donald Trump. It's not comfortable to not support your nominee, but given the positions he's taken and the tone and tenor of his campaign, I simply can't.
The RNC was planning to praise Donald Trump's speech on immigration in your home state a few days ago, but once officials of the RNC heard the speech, they dropped plans to praise the speech. That's pretty remarkable for the RNC not to praise the speech of the Republican nominee.
Well, it was a pretty remarkable speech in that it just really doubled down on a lot of the rhetoric that he's used before, and it really didn't explain with any clarity where he's going to move ahead in the future. It simply went back to some of the positions he's taken.
You didn't buy Rudy Giuliani's explanation earlier this morning, saying that there was a line in there that people didn't pay enough attention to that would allow for possibly a discussion of letting undocumented immigrants stay in this country after the ones who have committed other criminal acts are deported.
Well, if it was there, it was buried pretty deep, and no, I didn't catch it. There was just a statement that you're going back, and think of that for a bit. If you have 11 million who are undocumented here, a lot of those are children who were brought across the border when they were 2 years old, say. What he's saying is that they would all have to go back, or this is what I heard, and then that they would perhaps be able to come back here in the future. But if there aren't visa categories to accept those who have been deported, then they wouldn't be able to come back. Or they would have to remain out for a long period of time until some vague talk of a commission would create a visa category for them to come back.
So Hillary Clinton's campaign after the speech in Arizona, as I'm sure you know, announced that they were going to take out a six-figure ad buy in Arizona. It's been 20 years since the state went for a Democratic presidential nominee, but take a look at this CNN poll. It shows Trump ahead of Clinton, but only by 5 points. Do you think that Trump is comfortably ahead, or does Clinton have a chance of winning Arizona?
Well, it shouldn't be close. You know, we went big, I think 8 points for Mitt Romney last time. Arizona should still be a red state, but Donald Trump, with the rhetoric that he's used and the characterizations of many of the state's population, have put the state in play. And unfortunately, that leads to Democrats spending a lot of money here, unfortunately for Republicans. I think John McCain will be fine. He did very well in the primary last week. A lot of the down-ballot Republicans will be fine as long as they aren't seen as believing the same things that Donald Trump believes in.
So you think Hillary Clinton could win Arizona potentially because of Donald Trump's rhetoric?
Yes, I do.
Senator John McCain, as you note, he's up for re-election this year. Take a listen to this from his new campaign video.
If Hillary Clinton is elected president, Arizona will need a senator who will act as a check, not a rubber stamp, for the White House.
It's interesting, McCain presenting himself as a check on a President Clinton rather than as an ally of President Trump, who he doesn't even mention Donald Trump in the video. Is this the right argument for Republicans to be making? Essentially the same argument Republicans made in 1996 when they were convinced that Bob Dole was going to lose.
Well, I've said that I think Republicans do need to distance themselves from Donald Trump. I'm not suggesting that John McCain has to do that. He's running a smart campaign, and he has broad and deep support here. But I do think it's a position that Republicans ought to take. We cannot, for the future of the party, be associated with this kind of message and with this kind of tone and tenor. It's just, it's not good for the party. It really isn't.
When you listen to Hillary Clinton's speech about Donald Trump appealing to the darker parts of this country, appealing to racism, essentially, did you agree or disagree with what she had to say?
Well, I've been saying that long before Hillary Clinton was talking about it. I think a lot of us have been. I think that's the problem that we have when you when you refer to a judge born in Indiana as a Mexican in a pejorative way, when you refer to John McCain as he has, that you can't respect him because he was captured, or you refer to those who cross the border as rapists, you know, you just can't appeal to a broad swath of the electorate. And so even if Republicans all lined up behind Donald Trump in Arizona, it still wouldn't be enough. You've got to appeal to swing voters, to independents, and he's just going out of his way, it seems, to offend them.
One last question, sir. If Hillary Clinton does win the election, would you want Mitch McConnell to bring up Merrick Garland as soon as possible for a vote during the lame duck session of Congress? Do you fear she would appoint somebody even more liberal?
I would like him to bring him up. I think the principle ought to be for Republicans to confirm the most conservative jurists that we're able to confirm. And if we do lose the election, then we ought to move swiftly, I think, to confirm Merrick Garland.
Senator Flake, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
You bet. Thank you.